Chapter 2031. Fengjiu was taken aback. What is it? Han Yuan glared at her. Still playing dumb? It's about taking the old man as your master. As soon as he said this, the little bastard curled his lips and looked away. No. She couldn't be bothered to become his disciple. Although Chu Batian, the palace master of the Tianyuan Palace, was far weaker than Han Yuan, she was indebted to him. He had helped her unlock her profound spirit body, and he had also given her the ancient divine sword Qingfeng. Although he had only left her a few treasures, he had not given her any guidance on cultivation. However, she had grown stronger step by step with the things he had left behind, in addition to her own talent and comprehension. Aside from what she learned in her past life, she learned almost everything on her own in this life. What was the use of having another master? She would only be looking for trouble. When she became Chu Baishan's disciple, she promised to do 3 things for him. Now, Tianyuan Palace's influence had spread from the lower continents to the upper continents with her, and the ancient divine sword, Qingfeng, was in her hands. There was only one thing left to do, and that was to find his descendants. Unfortunately, after so many years, it was extremely difficult to find his descendants. Her master, Chu Batian, was the overlord of the lower continents. However, when she sent people to secretly investigate, there was no news from the lower continents. Now that she was in the upper continents and her influence had shifted here, it was even more difficult to find his descendants in the lower continents. Sometimes she even wondered if his descendants were already gone. Or if they had hidden away and become ordinary people. After all, his descendants were still alive. If news of her possessing the Qingfeng sword spread in the lower continents, his descendants should have come knocking on her door. However, this matter was like a stone thrown into the sea. There was no response at all. Little bastard? Little bastard? Han Yuan couldn't help but glare when he saw the youth in a daze in front of him. Is the old man's words so boring? How can you be distracted when talking to an old man? Fengjiu came back to her senses and glanced at him. I'm not distracted. I just happened to be thinking of something. She took out a wine gourd from her space and unscrewed the lid to take a sip. When the lid was unscrewed, the fragrance of the wine filled the air. Huan Yuan's eyes lit up when he smelled it. He swallowed and stared at the wine gourd in Fengjiu's hand. Why is a child drinking wine? Give it to me. Let this old man have a taste. He reached out to snatch it away, but Fengjiu dodged. She held the wine gourd and stared at him vigilantly. Don't you have one? Why are you snatching mine? This old man was so greedy. The old man was a little surprised by the speed at which he dodged. He couldn't help but stroke his beard. He narrowed his eyes and stared at him while saying, Old man, I think your wine is more fragrant. I am an old man, so you have to respect me, do you understand? Fengjiu started laughing when she heard this. She stared at the old man who had a rosy complexion and a smooth face that didn't have a single wrinkle. She said, Besides your white hair, beard, and eyebrows, you don't look like an old man at all. Chapter 2032. Fengjiu's mouth twitched when he saw the old man's smug expression. She didn't dare to listen to him. He turned his body slightly and moved to the other side, taking another sip of wine. Seeing that the little bastard was drinking with his back facing him and ignoring him, the old man glared at him. Little bastard, are you listening to what this old man is saying? Little bastard. The old man jumped in front of him. I'm talking to you. I'm not a little bastard, Fengjiu said as she held the wine in her arms and refused to give it to him. You're a little bastard. You took my treasure the first time we met. If you're not a little bastard, then what are you? He was angry when he thought about that. This kid was too cunning. Fengjiu quickly put away the wine gourd and stood up. He walked over to Second Master Chai. Second Master, when are we leaving? Second Master Chai respected Feng Nine even more because he had saved them twice in a row. He did not look down on Feng Nine just because he was a teenager. Hearing Feng Ix's question, Second Master Chai said, I'll discuss it with the immortal monarch. Then he walked towards Han Yuanzi. Not long after, Han Yuan and Second Master Chai finished their discussion. The group moved forward again. Has the immortal master been here before? Second Master Chai asked. Of course. As Master Hun Yuan spoke, he glanced at Feng Jiao from the corner of his eyes and inwardly cursed. This little bastard, he had repeatedly brought up the matter of taking Feng Jiao as his master, and yet he had still managed to fool him. He didn't believe that with his prestige, he wouldn't be able to take this boy as his disciple. Hearing this, Second Master Chai asked again, "How long until we reach the crater?" "According to our speed, we should be able to reach that area in about 10 days. However, this is assuming that the journey is peaceful. If something were to happen along the way, it would be hard to say." Hun Yuanzi walked leisurely with his hands behind his back. He was thinking about how he could make that brat obediently acknowledge him as his master during this period of time. That little bastard definitely didn't know how strong he was. As long as he knew how strong he was, he would definitely rush over and beg him to be his disciple. When he inexplicably thought of that scene, the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up. His eyebrows were full of joy. Oh, just thinking about it made him excited. What should he do? No, he had to find a chance to show off his skills. He had to show that little bastard how strong he was. Zhuo Junyue, who was walking beside Hun Yuanzi, saw that the old man's expression kept changing along the way. He didn't know what happy things the old man was thinking, but the corners of the old man's mouth were almost reaching behind his ears. Zhuo Junyue was even more puzzled when he saw the old man's spirited expression. The old man was angry just a moment ago. Why did he suddenly become so happy? He glanced at the old man, then at the young man in green behind him. He thought that the old man's good mood must have something to do with that young man. They walked all the way until the sky gradually darkened. Only then did they stop in the forest. "Let's rest here tonight. You guys go pick up some branches and come back to light 2 bonfires. Let everyone rest. Remember, send a few people to take turns keeping watch." Second Master Chai instructed. He then turned to Hun Yuan and said, "Immortal Master, please take a seat and rest." "Okay." Hun Yuan didn't sit down. Instead, he walked up to Feng Jiao and paced back and forth in front of him. Chapter 2033. The old man walked with his hands behind his back and stopped in front of Feng Jiao. He put on the look of an expert and said, "Little bastard, do you know that this old man is very powerful?" Feng Jiao simply nodded. Seeing him agree so easily, the old man's words were stuck in his throat. He glared and asked, "Do you really know? Do you know what kind of existence this old man is in the Nebula Immortal sect?" "It's the sect's Mount Tai," she said with a smile, which was a stark contrast to the old man's glare. "When the sect master sees this old man, he has to respectfully call me senior brother." He stroked his beard and said, looking like an expert. She nodded with a smile. "If you know, then why don't you accept me as your master?" He glared and said. Seeing him so persistent, Feng Jiao sighed. "I already have a master." "Your master? Who is it? Is it some old monster from the 4 great immortal sects?" He thought that such a good seedling's master should have some background. "You don't know my master." Feng Jiao shook his head. Her master Chu Baishan's corpse had been in the secret underwater palace for decades. But in the lower continents, the older generation knew that he was a famous figure. But in the upper reaches, it would be strange if they knew him. This old man doesn't know him? Hearing this, Hun Yuan was startled. He said with a strange look, "This old man doesn't know anyone who is a nobody. Could it be that your master doesn't have a big background? Just a small figure?" Feng Jiao smiled. "No matter what kind of person he is still a person. The world is so big, and there are so many hidden experts. Senior dares to say that you know all of them?" Hearing this, the old man choked and was speechless. There were many hidden experts. Of course, he didn't know any of them. However, how could this sly and mischievous kid be the disciple of some hidden expert? The two of them chatted here and there. The people on the other side had already lit a fire and called the two of them over. The old man walked back to the fire with his hands behind his back and sat down, while Feng Jiao leaped onto a tree and leaned against a branch to rest. "Xiao Jiao, aren't you going to come down and warm yourself up by the fire and eat something?" Chai Feng asked as he approached the tree. "No need, I have food here," Feng Jiao said from the tree and took a sip of wine. Seeing this, Chai Feng took out his rations and threw them to the tree. Here, catch this. This is for you. Feng Jiu caught it and said, thanks. Chai Feng smiled and walked back to the bonfire to chat with the others. Feng Jiu closed her eyes and rested. She felt a slight movement on the branch and opened her eyes. She saw that Zhuo Junyue was leaning against a branch not far away, holding his sword with both hands and squinting his eyes. Seeing this, she looked away and went back to sleep. She thought that she could have a good night's rest. Unexpectedly, she heard some movement in the middle of the night. She opened her eyes and quickly sat up. At the same time, Zhuo Junyue, who was on the same tree, opened his eyes and sat up. He glanced at Feng Nine and then looked around. Han Yuan, who was resting by the bonfire, had also noticed the movement. He instinctively looked at Feng Jiu on the tree and was surprised to see that he had also woken up. This kid's vigilance isn't bad, he thought to himself as he kicked Fan Yixio and the others beside him. Chapter 2034. What are you doing, Martial Granduncle? Get up. We're surrounded, the old man said angrily. Everyone in the Chai family was startled by his words. Surrounded? The Chai family members were on high alert. Why didn't the night watchman alert us? Second Master Chai used his divine sense to investigate and his face turned serious. He's been killed. There was a faint smell of blood in the air and a low and oppressive murderous aura permeated the air, making the night even colder. Everyone's heart sank when they heard this. He was killed? He was killed without making a sound? What a powerful skill. What a brilliant assassination technique. To think that he didn't even make a single sound when he killed someone. Seeing that there was no movement around, Han Yuanzi signaled Second Master Chai to speak. Seeing this, Second Master Chai shouted in a deep voice, "Who is it? Come out." Hee, I didn't expect there to be one or two capable people in this inconspicuous team. A sneer was heard. That person's voice was cold and his voice was filled with a powerful pressure. Almost as soon as the voice spread, the blood and qi of some of the weaker members of the Chai family started to churn. A faint feeling of discomfort appeared. Han Yuanzi frowned when he saw that some of them could no longer stand and bent down. He released a wave of pressure from his body and blocked the pressure that was coming towards them. His old voice was full of energy as he shouted, "Who are you? Come out." "It's Han Yuanzi from the Nebula Immortal sect?" The voice was heard again. This time, a person walked out from the shadows. With the help of the night light and the two bonfires, they could clearly see that it was an old man in his 60s. He was clearly an old man, but he was wearing a dark red robe, which did not match his aged appearance at all. It was very strange. That person had the appearance of an old man, but his voice was that of a middle-aged man. He did not sound old at all. Right after that old man walked out, some people dressed in black appeared around him as well. Demonic cultivator. It's a demonic cultivator. The appearance of these people no longer concealed their aura. A dense and evil demonic aura spread out, causing everyone to involuntarily take a few steps back. Their sword-wielding hands trembled slightly. It was no wonder that they could kill the night watchman without making a sound. These people were all demonic cultivators. The aura that overflowed from their bodies made people's hearts tremble. Demonic cultivators were cruel and bloodthirsty. Demonic cultivators were the natural enemies of the Orthodox sects and all Orthodox cultivators. Similarly, all Orthodox cultivators were enemies of the demonic cultivators. As long as they encountered the demonic cultivators, regardless of whether there was a grudge between them or not, they would go on a killing spree. They were even more bloodthirsty and ruthless than the Scorpion mercenary group. They hadn't expected that they would still be targeted by a fiendish cultivator even though they had been extremely careful along the way. Just when had they been targeted? They didn't even notice. Han Yuan stared at the old man and frowned. "You're one of the Demon Lord's 10 subordinates, Blood Demon." His tone was firm, and it was clear that he recognized the old man. Hee, Han Yuan Immortal Lord, you have good eyes. Chapter 2035. Feng Jiu, who was on the tree, narrowed her eyes. She quietly looked at the demonic cultivators walking out from the shadows below. She did not expect to encounter demonic cultivators here. What a surprise! The blood demon, one of the 10 demons under the demon venerable? Was it this old man in red? She recalled the information collected by the Phoenix Guards. It had indeed mentioned that there were 10 powerful demonic cultivators under the demon venerable, and one of them was the blood demon. It had also mentioned that the blood demon was very easy to recognize because he liked to wear dark red robes. Moreover, he had once suffered from chi deviation during cultivation and had to suck human blood as nourishment. Otherwise, his appearance would become that of an old man. It seemed that he was the person below. The news she had received was that Han Rong would come to the fire forest. She did not expect the blood demon to come as well. According to the information, the blood demon had the strength of a peak immortal sage. Why was he here? Was Han Rong here as well? Her heart skipped a beat. Her gaze swept past the people below. When her gaze landed on a black-robed man beside the blood demon, her eyes flashed. Han Rong. He was wearing the same black robes as the other demonic cultivators. However, unlike the other demonic cultivators, he was wearing a half-mask. However, that half-mask was not difficult to recognize for someone like her who had wanted to kill him for a long time. Killing intent rose in her heart. Even though her aura did not leak out, her momentary change still attracted the attention of Zhuo Junyue, who was on the same tree. He glanced sideways and his gaze landed on the green-robed young man. Doubt flashed across his eyes. Was it his imagination? He actually saw a flash of killing intent on the young man? I didn't expect that there would be a Hunyuan immortal lord in this small group. What a surprise! The blood demon chuckled. However, his voice was sinister and somewhat ear-piercing. I've long wanted to experience the immortal lord's Hunyuan 8 trigrams palm. Today, I've met you. Hunyuan immortal lord, how about we exchange a few blows? The sinister voice was filled with excitement and eagerness. Although it was a question, it was clear that he was determined to fight Hunyuan Zi. Master Hunyuan calmly glanced at the surrounding black-clothed demonic cultivators before his wise eyes landed on the blood demon. He said, "There are plenty of people who want to fight with this old man. Unfortunately, this old man doesn't easily show his primeval 8 trigrams palm. If you want to fight with me, sure, but there's a condition." Hearing this, the blood demon chuckled and asked with interest, "Immortal monarch, please tell me. I'll fight you with the primeval chaos 8 trigrams palm. If I win, you can't touch anyone here. You must take your people and leave this old man's sight." Hunyuan said in a deep voice. When everyone heard Primordial Chaos's words, their hearts warmed. He wanted to protect them and keep them alive. After all, if they were to engage in a chaotic battle with these demonic cultivators, only a handful of them would be able to survive. However, the other party was a demonic cultivator. If they lost, would they really leave with their people? Everyone thought to themselves. They felt uneasy, nervous, and worried. Chapter 2036. Everyone was a little surprised when they heard this, but after giving it some thought, they realized that they were just insignificant figures. It was understandable that the blood devil looked down on them. Han Yuanzi also felt that the others were insignificant to the blood demon. Since he had made such an offer, the blood demon was a respectable person and would not go back on his word. Therefore, he waved his hand and signaled for everyone to retreat. The blood devil's eyes flickered with excitement. He also raised his hand to signal the surrounding devil cultivators to retreat, leaving the whole place empty. 2 figures, one righteous and one evil, surged their chi, causing 2 powerful chi and pressure to spread out in the surroundings. Even in the night, the red chi emitted from the blood devil's body was very obvious. It was as red as blood and was filled with devil chi, causing people to tremble in fear. He wasn't holding a weapon in his hand, but his hands were rotating in front of him. A red devil force formed into a rolling energy ball that whistled through the air. On the opposite side, Han Yuanzi took a step forward, bent his waist slightly, and waved his hands. The chi in the air formed into a white 8 trigrams. When the devil cultivator waved his hands to attack the rolling energy ball, the 8 trigrams chi in his hands struck out. Almost in an instant, when the 2 streams of air rushed out, they collided with each other with a rumbling sound. The The powerful air wave instantly knocked down the surrounding trees, and the surrounding grass was pushed outwards by this wave of air. The space expanded again, and two figures, one red and one gray, quickly swept out without saying a word. Whoosh, bang. Two visible chi streams, one red and one white, flew out along with their attacks. The sharp sound of the chi streams was like a sharp blade, causing the surrounding people to be dumbfounded. This was a battle between experts. The speed of their attacks was so fast that they couldn't even see their moves. The speed of their movements and the surging of the chi streams made them feel inconceivable. Among the people present, the second master of Chai family had already broken through the flying immortal realm and entered the immortal realm, becoming an early-stage immortal sage expert. Blood Devil, on the other hand, was at the peak of the immortal sage realm. He was only one step away from entering the immortal venerable realm. His strength was so strong that no one dared to underestimate him, especially when Primal Origin was an immortal venerable. The fact that he dared to challenge Primal Origin showed that he was very confident in his own strength. Even though the two of them were clearly at different levels of strength, the Blood Demon showed no signs of being defeated. This made him worried. If the Hunyuan Immortal Lord was defeated by the Blood Demon, all of them would probably die. Fengjiu sat on the tree and watched the battle. The old man was an intermediate immortal venerable. Logically speaking, he shouldn't be defeated by the Blood Devil. However, the Blood Devil had surprised him. Although the Blood Devil's cultivation base was one grade lower than the old man's, he was still able to fight with the old man. This showed that the Blood Devil's combat strength was incredible. If this continued, it would be hard to say who would win and who would lose. Seeing Fengjiu staring at them with a pensive expression, Zhuo Junyue thought that he was worried and whispered, "Don't worry. That Blood Demon is no match for the old man. He hasn't used his 8 trigrams fist yet." Chapter 2037. The 8 trigrams fist is his famous fist technique. This fist technique is unpredictable and unpredictable. When he punches, it's as if he's trying to stop a horse. When he punches, it's as if he's wading in water. He moves like a dragon and flips like an eagle. He wins through ingenuity. Most of the time, he doesn't show it to others easily. When he uses the 8 trigrams fist, very few people can match him, Zhuo Junyue said slowly as he watched the two fight below. Fengjiu's eyes flickered. Why did it sound so similar to the I Tai Chi fist? Just as she was thinking, she heard a low shout from below. "Blood Demon, take my fist." Han Yuanzi let out a low growl and changed his fist technique. His movement technique also followed suit, and his footsteps also changed. She was slightly surprised. The 8 trigrams fist was indeed similar to Tai Chi. When Blood Demon saw the change in his fist, he was delighted. "Haha, you're finally using the 8 trigrams fist? Then let me have a taste of your 8 trigrams fist." His speed increased again. He clenched his fist and punched out. A powerful airflow followed his fist. When the two fists collided, a red and a white airflow collided. The airflow on their bodies did not give way to each other. As their fists collided, their feet did not idle and attacked each other. His fists changed again and the wind from his fists changed. His footwork was as smooth as flowing water as he punched out with both fists. The two fists struck Bloodseeker's chest and abdomen with a force that was too late to cover one's ears. The hidden force contained in the fists forced Bloodseeker to retreat more than 10 meters, and he let out a muffled groan. Blood Demon's feet rubbed against the ground to slow his retreat. 2 long marks were left on the ground. Blood chi rushed up to his throat. He felt a salty taste in his mouth and knew it was blood chi overflowing. In order to not let Han Yuanzi look down on him, he swallowed the blood. The 8 trigrams fist is indeed extraordinary. Again. He stared at Han Yuanzi with a sinister look. The corner of his mouth twitched, revealing a sinister smile. "Today, I'll use my Vajra 8 steps to defeat your 8 trigrams fist." "Dream on." Han Yuanzi snorted. "Not only is your fist technique inferior to mine, but your strength is also inferior to mine. You want to fight me? You'd better go back and train for another 10 or 20 years. With a single word of disagreement, the two of them began to fight again. Because they had used all of their strength, a powerful pressure pervaded the surroundings, causing the entire air to be shrouded in a low and oppressive aura. About 10 moves later, the blood demon was hit by Master Huanyuan's fist again. This time, one could clearly hear the sound of his ribs breaking and blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. Han Yuanzi snorted and put his hands on his hips, a smug look on his face. How about it? Didn't the old man say that you're not my match? Why aren't you taking your men and scramming back? Blood Demon raised his hand to wipe away the blood at the corner of his mouth. He looked at the smug Han Yuan and revealed a strange smile. Is that so? I'm no match for you? Then let's try again. Again? This old man doesn't have the time to play with you again and again. Han Yuan frowned. He stared at Bloodseeker and threatened, if you don't take her away now, I'll most likely take your life this time. You better think it through. Chapter 2038. Seeing this, Han Yuanzi thought that since the blood demon insisted on fighting, he would take his life. As long as he died, the other demonic cultivators would not dare to attack when they saw that he was protecting this place. After making up his mind, he clenched his fists and rushed forward. However, this time he was somewhat surprised. The target that he was supposed to hit flashed in front of him at the speed of light. He only had time to see the dark red figure flash past him. Then, he heard the blood demon's sinister laughter behind him. Eat my fist. Han Yuanzi quickly turned around and retreated. However, even if he turned around and retreated as fast as he could, he was still not as fast as the blood demon's fist. Watch out! Cries of alarm were heard at that moment. They came from Fengjiu, Zhuojunyue, and Second Master Chai. However, even though they had warned him, they were still a step too late. Bang 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 bang. The sound of the fists landing on Master Huanyuan's body rang out with loud bangs. After the first punch landed, the next one followed closely behind. The blood demon chased after Master Huanyuan while he was retreating, and his fists landed heavily on Master Huanyuan's chest. Several punches were delivered in an instant, and they were so fast that no one would be able to react to them. However, Master Huanyuan was hit by those punches, and blood trickled down the corner of his mouth. His face was pale, and he staggered a little as he retreated. Finally, he could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. His body swayed slightly as he fell backward. He wanted to stabilize himself but found that he could not muster the strength to do so. Old man. Zhuojuanyue's face was cold as he came to his side. He supported the swaying Han Yuanzi and frowned at the blood demon. You cheated. Others might not have seen it, but he saw it. Not only did the blood demon use a feint to trick the old man, he also had sharp objects between his fingers when he punched. When the punches landed heavily on the old man's body, blood gradually seeped out of his chest. The blood was slowly turning black. Hee, nothing is too deceitful in war. Moreover, we are demonic cultivators. You can't be so naive as to think that we will keep our promises like you so-called righteous people, right? The blood demon chuckled. His laughter was filled with mockery as if he was mocking their stupidity. Despicable. Second Master Chai also cursed angrily. He had never expected these demonic cultivators to be so despicable and shameless. This blood devil was an immortal sage expert, but he actually used such a despicable method to win against primordial chaos. Blood Demon raised his head and laughed. Haha. So what if he was despicable? Now that Han Yuanzi has been struck by my fatal 7-step nail, he can't even protect himself. Do you think your end will be any better than his? Hearing this, Han Yuanzi's face turned livid with anger. Damn it. It was simply despicable and shameless. You guys? When he moved his chi and blood flowed faster, and the poison in his body flared up even faster. When his chi and blood surged up, he spat out another mouthful of blood. However, the blood was already showing signs of turning black. You're angry just because she said a few words? So easily provoked? At some point, Fengjiu had already arrived by his side. He carelessly placed a hand on Han Yuanzi's back. Then, the silver needle between his fingers pierced into Han Yuanzi's body, sealing his meridians. Seeing that it was him, Han Yuanzi took a deep breath to suppress his anger. Chapter 2039. Feng Jiu glanced at him and raised his eyebrows. What are you trying to do? Don't tell me you're going to fight the blood demon. The old man had fallen for his trap. He would have been suicidal if he had stepped forward. Take care of him. Zhuo Junyue looked at the blood demon in front of him as he spoke. At the same time, Second Master Chai walked up and stood beside Zhuo Junyue. The blood demon laughed when he saw the two approaching. He looked at them mockingly and disdainfully. What are the two of you trying to do? The two of you are not worthy of my attention, nor are you worthy of my attention. However, since you want to die one by one, I have all the time in the world to play with you. He took a step back as he spoke and gestured for the two people beside him to step forward. Go and teach these two a lesson. Show them our strength. The two of them answered. They flew forward and unsheathed their long swords. Han Rong was still standing beside the blood demon. However, she was now looking at the young man in green. However, the people from the other families had surrounded them and blocked the figures of Han Yuanzi and the young man in green. They could not see what they were doing. Feng Jiu was helping Han Yuanzi check his wounds. When he lifted his shirt, he saw the wounds caused by the sharp nails on his gloves. Feng Jiu's eyes narrowed slightly. He treated the wounds while he spoke mercilessly. Old man, didn't you say you were very powerful? How could you be injured like this by someone weaker than you? Look at you now. Do you look anything like the immortal sex Mount Tai? As the poison in his body flared up, the old man's aura gradually weakened. When he heard Feng Jiu's words, he replied unwillingly, I was careless. Who would have thought that the blood demon would be so shameless? He couldn't beat me, so he resorted to underhanded means. If I were him, I would have done the same. Only you would follow the rules when dealing with a demonic cultivator. Feng Jiu sneered. He took out a pill and stuffed it into the old man's mouth. Where did this come from? Let me have a look. When he took out the pill, he smelled a strong medicinal fragrance. Just as he was about to check what grade the pill was, he was forced into his mouth. He only felt the pill slide down his throat, and a cool aura flowed through his body. Immortal Monarch is so heavily injured, and we're surrounded by demonic cultivators. I'm afraid we won't be able to escape. A disciple beside him said, his face filled with unconcealable worry. Chai Feng stood beside Feng Jiu and asked hopefully, Xiao Jiu, do you have any other ideas? What can I do? These devil cultivators are not easy to deal with. She curled her lips and pricked his 10 fingers to force out the poison, saying, Old man, you owe me a life. How long will it take to recover? Han Yuan asked, worried about the battle ahead. Feng Jiu glanced at him. Do you think you can fight again after the poison is cured? Forget it. It's good enough that you didn't die. You took a few punches from the blood demon, and each of them hit your chest. Even if you take the pill, you won't be able to recover in a short time. I'm worried that they won't be a match for those demonic cultivators, especially with the blood demon. Even if all of you work together, you won't be a match for the blood demon. As Han Yuan spoke, he clutched his chest and tried to stand up. Chapter 2040. But how could Han Yuan calm himself down to regulate his breathing? If he couldn't fight, wouldn't they be at the mercy of others? There's still a pill here. Keep it and eat it. Feng Jiu gave him a pill bottle, then stood up and walked forward. The two demonic cultivators in front of them were no match for Zhuo Junyue and Second Master Chai. After a brief battle, both demonic cultivators were injured. One of them even had his arm cut off by Zhuo Junyue. The thick smell of blood permeated the air. The blood demon narrowed his eyes and stared coldly at Zhuo Junyue. I didn't expect you to have some skills. The two demonic cultivators covered their wounds and retreated. They stared at the two of them viciously. Zhuo Junyue turned his sword and pointed it at the ground. He didn't say anything and just stared at the blood demon cautiously. Feng Jiu walked forward and glanced at the demonic cultivators. Her gaze naturally swept past Han Rong. She smiled inwardly when she saw him staring at her. No matter how hard he tried, he wouldn't be able to guess who she was. This time, she wouldn't let him escape. Han Rong looked at the young man in green. The more he looked at him, the more he felt that there was something wrong with him. However, he couldn't put his finger on it. Thus, he moved closer to the blood demon and whispered a few words to him. After hearing Han Rong's whisper, the blood demon looked at Fengjie playfully. What's so special about this kid? Why can't I tell? Han Rong looked at the young man in green and said in a low voice, "This young man doesn't seem to be afraid. His expression is calmer than the others. I feel that something is wrong. However, his cultivation is only at the gold core stage. I can't tell what is wrong." Is that so? Since there's something wrong, why don't you test him? The blood demon glanced at him and said. Han Rong froze when he heard this. However, he could only reply, yes. He walked forward and looked at the young man in green. He drew his sword and pointed it forward. You come out. Fengjie raised an eyebrow when she saw the sword pointed at her. You're calling me? She took a step forward but was stopped by Zhuo Junyue. Go back. Zhuo Junyue frowned as he looked at Fengjie. He raised his hand and stepped in front of Fengjie. Seeing this, Fengjie smiled. He's pointing his sword at me. How can I dodge? One had to know that she had been looking for an opportunity to kill Han Rong. Now that the opportunity had presented itself to her, how could she let it go so easily? Zhuo Junyue frowned as he watched Feng Nine walk out from behind him. She walked forward step by step. You want to fight me? I accept. She smiled and squinted her eyes. Looking at this scene, Han Yuan was somewhat worried and couldn't help but yell, "Little bastard, come back here." Everyone from the Chai family, as well as Fan Yixio and the others, were shocked. What was Xiaojie trying to do? He was only in the Golden Core realm. Did he want to die? Compared to the worry of Master Han Yuan and the others, Han Rong looked at the azure-robed young man slowly walking over. Not only was he not afraid, he even gave him a mysterious smile. Seeing that smile, Han Rong felt a bit strange. Who was this young man? Why did he give off such a dangerous feeling? Chapter 2041. Seeing the youth's sudden smile, the devilish charm on his lips, and the glint in his eyes when he narrowed them, Han Rong's heart skipped a beat. He pointed his sword at the youth and shouted, "Who the hell are you?" You'll know soon enough, Fengjie said softly. As soon as he finished speaking, his figure had already dashed out. His movements were so fast that it was inconceivable. She did not use any weapons, but the moment she attacked, it was a sure kill move, aiming straight for the opponent's fatal spot. A gust of wind followed her figure as she dashed out. Her extremely fast movements and sure kill moves attracted everyone's attention. Even Han Rong could not react to Fengjie's sudden attack. He hurriedly dodged, but no matter how fast he dodged, he still felt a piercing pain on his neck. After quickly retreating, he suddenly looked at the youth. At the same time, he touched the wound on his neck and his eyes widened in shock. You are Dot. Before he could finish speaking, he saw the youth in green raise his eyebrows in surprise. His lips curled into a devilish smile. However, that smile did not reach his eyes. At the same time, the green figure attacked him again. Every step was filled with killing intent. Every move was filled with killing intent. It was aimed right at his face. His heart was filled with shock and horror. Fengjie. This youth must be the ghost Dr. Fengjie. It's that woman. He hated her to the core. He had all the information on her, her movements, her attacks, and everything about her in his hands. That devilish smile, that terrifying glint in her eyes, and that strange movement, there was no one else other than Fengjie. However, he did not even have the chance to call out her identity. She closed in on him step by step, and her killing intent overwhelmed him. Damn it. He knew it was him. Whoosh! A sharp chi flowed out from Fengjie's hand and slashed across Han Rong's arm. That was the chi of the saber aura, which was extremely sharp. With one slash, a deep wound appeared on Han Rong's arm. Blood gushed out and quickly soaked his clothes. Even though he was wearing a mask, it was obvious that his face was pale, his lips were trembling, and his eyes were filled with fear and shock. His panicked expression was seen by everyone, but no one could guess the reason for it. Although the green-robed youth's movement technique was amazing, he had only displayed the strength of a gold core stage cultivator. Although the blood demon found it strange, he felt that if Han Rong did not even have the ability to deal with a gold core stage cultivator, then she was too useless. Moreover, he didn't have a good impression of Han Rong. Even if Han Rong died here, he wouldn't feel the slightest bit of regret. At this moment, seeing that the young man in green was able to injure him and even forced him to a dead end, he was somewhat interested. Ugh. Han Rong sucked in a breath of cold air and screamed. His knees bent and he fell forward pathetically to the ground. The back of his right leg had been stabbed and fresh blood flowed out. It was so painful that his entire leg was twitching. When the surrounding demonic cultivators saw this scene, their eyes flashed. However, the blood demon did not ask them to help. They just stood there and watched. After all, it was Han Rong and not them who had been forced into a dead end. Chapter 2042. The number of wounds on his body increased one after another. He had narrowly escaped death time and time again, and this made him tremble with fear, but he also felt ashamed and angry. That damnable Feng Jiao. She seemed to be able to kill him with every move, but she was able to injure him 70% without directly taking his life. She was playing him like a monkey. Did she want to watch him bleed to death? Did she want to torture him before he died? Damn it, he wouldn't let her have her way. He thought fiercely. Since the blood demon and the others didn't want to save him, he would drag Feng Jiao down with him even if he had to die. Thinking of this, he clenched his teeth and mobilized the spiritual power in his body. He was going to use all his strength to fight Feng Jiao. However, Feng Jiao seemed to have seen through his intentions. Before he could attack, she had already rushed toward him. The dagger in her hand flashed coldly and slashed toward his throat. Swish! The dangerous slash left a shallow wound on his neck. The fear of death and the other party's teasing made him furious. He glared at her. "I'll be ruthless with you." Hearing this, Feng Jiao sneered. So he didn't want to be ruthless with her? He was clearly anxious. Seeing the wounds all over his body open up, except for the wound on his neck, every cut was so deep that the bone could be seen. She felt that it was about time. This Han Rong was also pushed to the edge by her. The killing intent in her heart stirred. Her figure flashed, and the blade of the dagger pierced towards his lifeline. The blood demon, who had been watching, saw the murderous intent contained in the green-robed young man's blade. He could not help but look at Han Rong, who had stepped forward, and revealed a sinister smile. His sinister voice rang out at this moment. "Not just anyone can kill the people under my command." As the blood demon spoke, he flicked his hand and a stream of air attacked from his hand. He wanted to knock away the dagger in Feng Jiao's hand. However, at that moment, Feng Jiao threw the dagger in her hand into the air. She rushed forward and dodged the blood demon's attack. After catching the dagger, she turned around and stabbed it toward Han Rong's chest. Swish! The sharp aura of the blade spread out. With a muffled groan, Han Rong stepped back. He glared at Feng Jiao with unwillingness and hatred. He clutched his chest with one hand to stop the blood from gushing out. He was unwilling to fall. Just as the blood demon was surprised that Han Rong was able to dodge his attack, he saw Han Rong try to escape with his nascent soul after falling to the ground. A strange light flashed through the blood demon's eyes. He thought about how Han Rong's body was so heavily injured. If he didn't escape with his nascent soul, he might really die here today. Just as he was thinking about it, his nascent soul flew out from the body. However, just as the nascent soul escaped, the youth jumped up and tried to grab the nascent soul. Seeing this, he once again tried to stop the youth from killing the nascent soul. However, just as he sent out a gust of wind, the youth dodged to the side and waved his hand, letting out a roar eat him. Feng Jiao's cold voice came out. She waved her sleeve and a ray of light flew out. It instantly turned into a fierce beast and swallowed the nascent soul. Chapter 2043. This sudden scene had already stunned everyone. Whether it was the demonic cultivators or the people on Han Yuan's side, all of them had their mouths wide open as they stared at the youth in green, only feeling that it was inconceivable. The majestic and mighty cloud-swallowing beast was already at the level of a sacred beast. At this moment, It stood obediently beside the youth, smacking its lips as if it was recalling the taste of the nascent soul that it had just swallowed. As for the youth in green, his temperament and aura seemed to have changed in an instant. The originally simple and honest youth was now filled with a devilish and wanton aura. The night wind gently blew, blowing his hair, allowing them to see the corners of the youth's lips curl up slightly, as well as the languid and arrogant voice that came from his mouth. If I want to kill someone, no one will be able to escape. Fengzhou's chin was slightly raised, her eyebrows were full of wanton and arrogance. At this moment, she no longer restrained her aura, that noble temperament, that powerful aura that had been in a high position for a long time, naturally flowed out. There were only corpses left on the ground, and the nascent soul that had tried to escape had already been swallowed by the sacred beast. The surroundings were silent, only the sound of breathing and the rustling of the leaves on the ground being blown by the wind could be heard. This kid has hidden his strength. Han Yuan, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, muttered with his eyes wide open. There was actually a time when he had misjudged? This kid's skills and strength, most likely, were far more than what they saw now. No wonder he was unwilling to acknowledge him as his master. So it was because he himself had such strength and a contracted beast. A sacred beast? TSK, not simple. Seeing this, Zhuojun's eyes flashed with surprise. No wonder he had always felt that this youth gave him a very strange feeling, so it was because of this. To be able to have such a sacred beast, how could his cultivation be only at the golden core stage? That meant he had suppressed his strength? The people of the Chai family were also dumbfounded. That simple and honest-looking Xiaojiu actually had such a ferocious and powerful contracted beast? That was a sacred beast, right? Fan Yixio was also shocked as he looked at the green-clothed youth. This youth had been very low-key along the way, but had saved them twice. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed that the person just now was the one who had smiled and called him Big Brother Fan. How could such a person be a member of the Chai family? At this moment, he couldn't help but wonder. As for the people from the Chai clan, after recovering from their shock, they thought that the Nebula Immortal sect was truly a place with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Even Xiaojiu, this seemingly honest and thin youth, actually had such ability and had such a powerful contract beast. As expected of one of the 4 great immortal sects. The blood demon looked at the sacred beast, and the interest in his eyes grew stronger. He stared at the young man, and saw that the young man's cultivation level was still at the golden core stage. However, because he did not restrain his qi, he could faintly see that he was different from before. This made him curious. Who exactly was this young man? Who are you? Chapter 2044. Why do you care who I am? Fengzhou glanced around and snorted. Are you going to take your men away? Or do you want to fight me? It's up to you. But let me tell you, I'm not as easy to deal with as the old man. Han Yuanzi, who was sitting cross-legged at the back, heard this and his mouth twitched. What did he mean by not as easy to deal with as the old man? Did he mean that the old man was inferior to him? This little rascal was indeed a little rascal. He didn't know how to respect the old at all. Hearing Fengzhou's words, the blood demon laughed and looked at him with interest. Do you think you're qualified to fight me? Fengzhou smiled. You can try whether I'm qualified or not. Do you want to fight one-on-one or in a group battle? It's up to you. In a one-on-one fight, she might not be a match for the blood demon. If it was a group battle, she could let the contracted beasts in her space come out and exercise. Although the fire phoenix didn't come this time, both Tun Yun and Lao Bai were not weak. Seeing the arrogance and confidence between the young man's brows, the blood demon laughed sinisterly. Since you've killed my men, I should come and meet you. I want to see how capable you are. As soon as he finished speaking, a dark red figure flashed past like a ghost. His hand turned into a claw and grabbed at Fengzhou. Fengzhou still held the dagger in his hand. With a twist of his hand, the dagger glinted with a sharp light and stabbed at the claw. Seeing this, the blood demon immediately changed his claw into a palm. The wind from his palm hit Fengzhou's hand that was holding the dagger. She turned around and dodged. While her footwork changed, she didn't stop attacking. The two of them exchanged blows. Everyone who saw this scene was shocked. Not to mention that the blood demon's battle experience was not something that Fengjiu could compare to. His strength and cultivation were not something that ordinary people could deal with. Once the pressure of an expert was released, it would be difficult for weaker people to even straighten their backs in front of him. However, this young man could fight the blood demon without the slightest fear of his celestial sage aura. What did this mean? It meant that this young man's strength was not inferior to his. What a freakish monster! His bone age was so young, yet he had the same strength as an old monster? What kind of cultivation speed was this? It was too heaven-defying. No wonder that devil cultivator from before couldn't resist at all. No wonder that devil cultivator didn't hesitate to use his nascent soul to escape in order to find a way out. How could the blood demon, who was fighting with Fengjiu? He did not know what kind of thoughts had appeared in his mind, but he suddenly took a few steps back and stared at the young boy in front of him. He saw that the young boy had a delicate and handsome face, and there was a hint of confidence and coldness between his brows. His eyes were very beautiful, and the light in his eyes was sharp and intimidating. Looking at the young boy again, although his body was thin, it seemed that he had not yet grown up. If his body grew up in another 2 years, he could be a well-built young boy. Chapter 2045. Fengjiu frowned when he saw the blood demon suddenly retreat and look at her with that gaze. His expression turned cold. She was all too familiar with that gaze. The person who looked at her with that gaze didn't see her as a person, but as an object. "Brat, the more I look at you, the more I like you. How about you come to my side? I can promise you a bright future," the blood demon said with a smile. He thought that if he smiled, he would look amiable. However, he didn't know that it would have been better if he didn't smile. His smile made him look even stranger. Fengjiu sneered. "But I don't like you. You're already so old, yet you're still wearing red. You're such an eyesore." The blood demon's eyes narrowed, and a sinister look flashed through his eyes. "Since you refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit, then don't blame me for being impolite. Today, whether you're willing or not, you're mine." With that, the dark red figure attacked Fengjiu. Fengjiu's eyes turned cold, and spiritual power surged from his body as he rushed forward. Seeing the two fighting, Hunyuan was so angry that he cursed, "Old bastard, you perverted old bastard. What do you mean by, whether you're willing or not? I never thought that this old thing was such a perverted thing." The others were also bewildered when they heard the blood demon's words. Did the blood demon take a liking to Fengjiu? Could it be that an old guy like the blood demon was also a homosexual? For a moment, everyone looked at the two people in front of them with strange expressions, and they forgot to fear their current situation. Only Zhuo Junyue pondered after hearing the blood demon's words. He didn't think that the blood demon would have such thoughts. He should be thinking, seeing the youth's outstanding skills and cultivation, a thought flashed through his mind. He wanted to possess him. He wanted to keep Fengjiu by his side so that he could possess him when his lifespan was nearing its end. Thinking of this, his gaze darkened, and he pursed his lips as he looked at the scene in front of him. He wondered if Fengjiu had a chance to win. If he lost to the blood demon, no one here would be able to escape. Fengjiu would also fall into his hands and become his pet. Just as he was thinking, he heard a loud bang. He looked up and saw that the green-robed youth, Fengjiu, had been pushed back by the blood demon. He staggered back a dozen steps. Seeing this scene, his heart sank. Just as he was about to go forward, he was stopped by the old man. "Junyue, come here," Han Yuanzi called out in a deep voice. He frowned as he looked at the scene in front of him. There was a thoughtful look in his wise eyes. No one knew what he was thinking. Zhuo Junyue looked back at him and then at Feng Nine in front of him. He then walked up to him and asked in a deep voice, "What's the matter?" "This old man." The blood demon used the Vajra 7-step fist against the youth. How could the youth withstand it? The Vajra 7-step fist was the blood demon's famous martial technique. Hunyuan glanced at him and said, "You're not even as strong as that little bastard. Don't go up and cause trouble for him. Just watch from the side." You think he can handle it? Zhuo Junyue asked with a frown. That is hard to say. Chapter 2046. Zhuo Junyue was very surprised to hear this. This was indirectly admitting that the little bastard's cultivation was very strong. If he could even defeat the blood demon, then there was no need for him to take him as his master. If it wasn't for the scene in front of him, even if the little bastard himself told him that he was so strong that he didn't need to take him as his master, he wouldn't believe it. He can't deal with the blood demon's Vajra 7 steps fist. As Zhuo Junyue spoke, he looked at the youth who was retreating under the blood demon's attacks with a trace of worry in his eyes. Seeing that Fengjio's attacks were suppressed by the blood demon's Vajra 7 steps fist, Master Han Yuan was also worried, so he began to complain. This brat, I told him to take me as his master, but he didn't listen. Tell me, with his talent, if he took me as his master and learned my 8 trigrams fist, why would he be afraid of the blood demon? I'll go help him. Zhuo Junyue spoke and was about to go forward, but he was pulled back by the old man. Wait, look, that little bastard's posture seems to have changed. The old man pulled Zhuo Junyue with one hand and looked at the youth who was forced back by the blood demon's Vajra 7 steps fist. Zhuo Junyue's eyes flashed as he looked forward. Indeed, after the young man was pushed back again, his aura and posture had changed. After he was pushed back, he squatted down and placed his palms together. With one hand lowered and the other raised, he stared at the blood demon. His aura had been completely restrained by his posture, making it difficult for the young man to understand what was going on. However, when the youth took a step forward, his originally lightning-fast steps became as light as a cat's steps. At the same time, his hands moved and his spirit force surged. The blood demon clenched his fist and let out a roar. A Vajra 7 steps fist containing 500 kilograms of force was thrown at him. However, the youth moved slowly and nimbly to the side. He nimbly grabbed the blood demon's hand and used the force to push back the 500 kilograms of force. Bang! With a bang, Bloodseeker was pushed back more than 20 meters. He crashed into a large tree behind him and let out a muffled groan. The tree he was leaning against broke with a crack, and a trace of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. With a gloomy gaze, he looked at the young man who was leisurely moving his hands. He watched as the young man gathered the surrounding spiritual aura between his hands, forming a circle that was visible to the naked eye. What fist technique is this? Blood Demon asked in a gloomy voice. He raised his hand to wipe away the blood at the corner of his mouth. His 1,000 pounds of strength was actually deflected back by him with little effort? How could there be such a powerful technique in this world? Han Yuanzi's eyes widened when he saw this. He stared at Fengjio in shock and jumped up from the ground. He grabbed Zhuo Junyue's shoulder tightly and his face flushed with excitement. This is Tai Chi. Fengjio glanced back at Han Yuanzi and smiled wickedly. It is Tai Chi. Tai Chi? Blood Demon frowned. Tai Chi and 8 trigrams are one family? Why did he feel that it was similar to 8 trigrams? Tai Chi? Tai Chi. Chapter 2047. I don't care if you're Tai Chi or 8 trigrams. I don't believe that I can't take you down today. He shouted in a gloomy voice and took a step forward. His fist carried a fierce hidden force as he swung it at Fengjio. Tai Chi, using softness to overcome strength, using stillness to overcome strength, using weakness to overcome strength. Fengjio's gentle voice came out of her mouth. As she spoke, her movements and body technique changed. Although her movements seemed slow, she easily avoided the blood demon's Vajra 7 steps. Her body technique was as beautiful as moving clouds and flowing water. It was natural and smooth, and her body coordination was excellent. It was this set of fist techniques that didn't seem to have much strength that suppressed the blood demon's Vajra 7 steps again and again. The surrounding people were stunned. Han Yuanzi, in particular, was the most agitated. He unconsciously tightened his grip on Zhuo Junyue's shoulder, causing Zhuo Junyue to feel some pain. He frowned and turned to look at the red-faced old man. Take your hand away. Tai Chi. Tai Chi. This little bastard, how can this little bastard know Tai Chi? Which old monster taught him? He acted as if he didn't hear anything and spoke excitedly. He couldn't help but feel satisfied when he saw the blood demon miserably dodging the Tai Chi. Well done. Beat him. Beat him hard. Beat that shameless old thing to death. He cheered from the side. He was full of energy and his ruddy face shocked the demonic cultivators. Wasn't Han Yuanzi poisoned? With the blood demon's poison, people in the future would die within the time it takes to burn a stick of incense. Even if this old man had a cultivation base to protect his body, it was impossible for him to be fine and still have a ruddy face, right? What was going on? Was the poison ineffective on him? Or was he cured of the poison? If Han Yuanzi wasn't poisoned, it would be difficult for them to take the lives of those people. Just as everyone was pondering, they saw a surge of spiritual energy in front of the green-robed young man form a Tai Chi and fiercely attack the blood demon. With a bang, the blood demon was sent flying dozens of meters away. Poof! When his body flew out, blood demon coughed out a mouthful of blood. He helped himself up, but he didn't go forward. Instead, he put on the sharp gloves on his fingers and charged forward. Feng Jiu let out a loud roar and charged at Feng Jiu as if he was flying. He seemed to have activated his true chi and was ready to fight with his life on the line. However, when his fist was about to hit Feng Jiu, he suddenly pulled out a long sword from his sleeve and attacked Feng Jiu. A sharp sword aura was released, and the sword aura was threatening. Despicable! Everyone from the Chai family was shocked and cursed angrily. Their hearts were also in their mouths. In terms of weapons, Xiao Jiu was probably not his opponent. Moreover, Xiao Jiu did not have a weapon in his hand, only the dagger that he had previously hidden in his boot. This shameless old thing. He can't beat me, so he wants to play dirty. Han Yuanzi also cursed angrily. Zhuo Junyue frowned and wanted to go forward, but he saw that the old man's hand was still on his shoulder. He looked back at him and said, "Do you want to watch him die?" Chapter 2048. The old man gestured for Feng Jiu to look ahead. Just as the blood demon's longsword was about to reach him, Feng Jiu dodged to the side, and a green light flashed. At that moment, they did not see what it was. They only heard the clang of the sword and the blade. Clang! The sword light refracted, and the sword chi surged. At the same time, a groan was heard, and a trace of the smell of blood spread. The two figures exchanged several blows in an instant, and the clang of the sword and the blade was heard. The air was filled with powerful spiritual auras and coercion. The two of them were so fast that no one could clearly see the swords in their hands or their sword moves until a powerful airflow was knocked away and the two figures retreated. The long sword was pointed to the ground, and the green figure stood against the wind. At this moment, everyone could see the sword in the youth's hand. The Qingfeng sword. Han Yuanzi and Second Master Chai exclaimed at the same time. They recognized the Qingfeng sword. It was said that this sword was an ancient divine sword. However, this ancient divine sword had disappeared for many years. How could it suddenly appear again? And in the hands of such a youth? Zhuo Junyue looked at the young man holding the green sword, and a dark light flashed in his eyes. His expression changed for a moment, but it was so fast that people thought it was an illusion. He pursed his lips and looked quietly at the sword in the young man's hand that was glowing with a green light. The blade was sharp and cold, and the body of the sword was suffused with a green light. Before anyone could get close, they could feel the sharp sword chi. This was the ancient divine sword, the Qingfeng sword. Unlike the others, the blood demon was shocked when he saw the Qingfeng sword in the youth's hand. However, he was not shocked by the Qingfeng sword in the youth's hand. He was shocked by the youth's identity. "You're Feng Jiu. You're Feng Jiu, the ghost doctor. You're a girl." 3 consecutive affirmations came out of his mouth, and every single one of them carried monstrous rage, shock, and astonishment. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have dared believe that this handsome young man before him was the renowned ghost doctor Feng Jiu in the lower continent. Damn it. He had wanted to capture him and trap him by his side so that he could take over his young body in the future, but now he knew that the young man he had his eyes on was actually a woman. When he was still the ghost Dr. Fengjiu that even the demon lord was wary of, one could imagine how he felt. Ever since they were involved in the matter of destroying his Phoenix dynasty, they had turned the tables around and destroyed 2 dynasties with lightning speed, shocking the other powers in the lower reaches of the continent. In a short period of time, they had even united the powers in the lower reaches of the continent, making it impossible for them to attack. This ghost Dr. Fengjiu had even been repeatedly warned by the demon lord not to provoke her. Who would have thought that they would actually meet her again in this fire forest? At this moment, she thought of the method she used to kill Han Rong. She thought of how she only attacked Han Rong. Even when Han Rong escaped with her nascent soul, she still did not let her off. She finally understood. So she was Fengjiu, she was the ghost Dr. Fengjiu. What ghost Dr. Fengjiu? What girl? Chapter 2049. However, the old man's voice was clearly weak when he spoke, as if he lacked confidence. He stared at Fengjiu with a strange expression, sizing him up again and again. No one knew what he was thinking, but his expression was very strange. The others also looked in front of them in astonishment. Why did the blood demon say that Fengjiu was a woman? Wasn't he a man? That couldn't be, right? Zhuo Juanyue's gaze shifted slightly as he looked Fengjiu up and down, deep in thought. Fan Yixio was also stunned. A woman? That couldn't be, right? No matter how you look at him, he's still a young man. Even if he's a little handsome, he has nothing to do with being a woman. There's no trace of a woman's shyness or bashfulness on Fengjiu's body. How could he be a woman? Furthermore, they've been quite familiar with each other all this time. If he were a woman, how could they not recognize him? The blood demon ignored them. He cautiously took a step back and stared at the smiling young man in front of him. His embarrassment turned into anger as he shouted, "The great ghost Dr. Fengjiu has disguised herself as a man. It's one thing, but you've even changed your appearance and disguised yourself like this. What? Are you ashamed of yourself?" Unfortunately, he couldn't tell that this young man was a woman and still wanted to possess him. He really didn't dare to imagine what would happen if he, a dignified blood demon, was trapped in a woman's body. However, when he thought of this, he took a deep breath. His opponent was the ghost Dr. Fengjiu, someone who even the demon sovereign feared. How could he be so easily captured? He had thought too simply of the situation. Fengjiu twirled the emerald-edged sword in her hand and raised her eyes to look at the blood demon. Her lips curled into a smile that wasn't quite a smile. "I didn't think that the great blood demon would know of me. I'm truly honored. Fengjiu, I know your target was Han Rong. Now that Han Rong is dead, the enmity between us is over. I won't fuss about it with you today." As he spoke, the blood devil retreated step by step, and at the same time, he waved his hand to signal the other devil cultivators to retreat. Fengjiu didn't give chase as she watched the blood demon retreat. She just stood there and watched. At the same time, a cold voice mixed with spiritual energy came from her mouth. "Tell your demon sovereign that one day, I will flatten your demon palace." Hearing this, the blood demon felt a lump in his throat. He turned around and stared at the green figure with a gloomy face. He replied in a gloomy voice, "Our demon hall will be waiting for you at any time." As soon as he finished speaking, the group of devil cultivators disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. All that was left was the faint smell of blood in the air, as well as the astonishment and disbelief of the surrounding crowd. They all left just like that. Those demonic cultivators who couldn't even beat primordial chaos ran away after recognizing Fengjiu's identity? Everyone was dumbfounded. Some of them stared blankly at the green figure in front of them, only feeling that it was inconceivable. What was the background of this ghost Dr. Fengjiu? Could it be that just by flashing the ancient divine sword and mentioning the name of ghost Dr. Fengjiu, he could scare off the devil cultivators? Moreover, even the blood demon, one of the 10 great devil cultivators under the demon sovereign, was scared off? Were they seeing things? At this moment, everyone was shocked and felt that it was inconceivable. This was something that they had never encountered before. It was too strange, too unbelievable. Also, If the ghost Dr. Fengjiu that the blood demon was talking about was the young man in front of them, then wasn't he her? A woman. Chapter 2050. Fengjiu turned around when she sensed the gazes of the people behind her. When she met their curious and admiring gazes, she said helplessly, "Actually, one of the main reasons I entered the volcano forest was to kill that person." She pointed her Qingfeng sword at Han Rong's corpse on the ground. Her words told them that she was neither from the Nebula Immortal sect nor from the Chai family. Fan Ishio and the rest, as well as Second Master Chai's group, all stared at her with their mouths agape. They had thought that she was one of the other party's people, but after all this time, she had snuck in from nowhere. Xiaojiu, you are really a woman?" Chai Feng stared at her with a strange expression. He could not imagine what this young man would look like in female clothing. "Yes, I am a girl." She smiled. This smile did not have the evil charm she had when she accepted the challenge. Instead, it had the friendliness of a girl next door. But how can you be a girl?" He looked her up and down and pointed at Fengjiu's flat chest. He wanted to ask, but he could not bring himself to ask. "Kid, what are you asking? If she says she is a girl, then she must be a girl. Why do you have so many questions?" Second Master Chai patted Chai Feng's head to stop him from asking. Fengjiu smiled and didn't say anything else. She wiped the Qingfeng sword and prepared to put it away. However, a figure walked in front of her at this moment. "This is the ancient divine sword, Qingfeng sword? May I have a look?" Zhuo Junyue stood in front of Fengjiu and looked at the sword in her hand. Fengjiu was slightly surprised when she heard this, but she still handed the Qingfeng sword to him. "Don't touch it with your hands. The Qingfeng sword's aura will hurt you," she reminded him. Han Yuan, who was behind them, was stunned. What's wrong with Junyue? Why is he interested in the Qingfeng sword? Although the Emerald Edge sword was an ancient godly sword and even he was curious about it, it would be inappropriate for him to play around with other people's swords. "Thank you." Zhuo Junyue took the sword and took a look. The words, Qingfeng sword, were engraved on the blade and the sword aura was extremely sharp. Looking at the sword in his hand, his gaze flickered. No one knew what he was thinking. After a long time, he returned the Qingfeng sword to Fengjiu. He looked at her and asked, "How did you get this sword?" Zhuo Junyue was not a person who would overstep the bounds of propriety. Yet, such a person had done two unreasonable things in a row. After hearing his words, Fengjiu gave him a deep look. "This azure edge sword originally belonged to my master. He hid it in the myriad sword mound. When I first became his disciple, the second thing he told me to do was to enter the myriad sword mound to find the azure edge sword. He sent me into the myriad sword mound, and I personally found it and brought it out." Zhuo Junyue, Qingfeng, 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 Qingfeng. Zhuo looked, she, Qingfeng, Qingfeng, Qingfeng. Zhuo Junyue looked at her with deep eyes. He seemed to have many things to say, but in the end, he shook his head and did not speak. Fengjiu stared at him and said, "My master's surname is Chu." She saw that Zhuo Junyue had lowered his gaze and concealed the look in his eyes. Her heart skipped a beat and she handed him a token. "If you have the chance in the future, you can come find me at the Heavenly Pill Building in 100 River City." Chapter 2051. What are you trying to do? Are you trying to run away again? Han Yuanzi came to her side and glared at her. "You're so heartless. Are you going to leave us behind? Also, why don't I have the token you gave him? Give me one too." He extended his hand to Fengjiu. Fengjiu glanced at him and said with a smile, "The medicinal pills I gave you weren't cheap. Besides, I saved your life." "I don't need you to save me. That old thing can't kill me." He snorted and asked, "Where are you going? Aren't you going to come with us?" "Xiaojiu, are you really leaving?" Second Master Chai also stepped forward and asked. It was thanks to her that they were able to survive this journey. If it wasn't for her, it would have been very difficult for them to survive. Now that they heard that she was leaving, they couldn't help but feel anxious. Fengjiu saw that they were all nervous, so she smiled and said, "I still have some things to do." Originally, I sneaked into your team to not be so conspicuous and to not be discovered by Han Rong. Now that he is dead, I have to leave. Then will we meet again? Second Master Chai asked. He wanted to know what she gave Zhuo Junyue. If they needed her help in the future, where would they find her? Feng Jiao smiled at Second Master Chai's question. You can find me at the Heavenly Elixir Building in 100 River City. As she spoke, she leaped into the air and sat on the back of the super divine beast, Cloud Swallowing, who was standing at the side. We'll meet again. She cupped her fists and bowed to everyone. Her gaze swept past Han Yuanzi and landed on Zhuo Junyue. She was going to ask someone to investigate Zhuo Junyue's background. Hey, don't be in such a hurry to leave. I want to go with you. Where are you going? I want to go with you too. Han Yuanzi reacted and quickly followed. Feng Jiao's mouth twitched when she heard this. She sat on Swallow Cloud's back and looked at the old man who was tugging at her clothes like an old urchin. She asked, You still want me to acknowledge you as my master? Han Yuanzi shook his head and said. Suddenly, he smiled and looked at her. However, this old man wants to be your disciple. You can teach me Taiji Fist. I was so excited when I saw those moves, and they were similar to my Bagua Quan. So, I want to learn your Tai Chi Fist. Please accept me. Hearing Huan Yuan's words, not only were the people of the Chai family stunned, even Fan Yixio and the other disciples of the Immortal Sect were stunned. Their Nebula Immortal Sect's Tai Shan actually wanted to take Feng Jiao as his master? Wasn't this too reckless? Although Feng Jiao's medical skills and strength were outstanding, Han Yuanzi's age was obvious. It was inconceivable that such an old man would want to take a young man, no, a woman as his master. No matter how one looked at it, they couldn't understand what Han Yuanzi was thinking. Upon hearing Han Yuanzi's request, Feng Jiao's eyelids twitched. He glanced at him and said, You're too old. I won't accept you. Hearing that he was being ignored, Han Yuanzi anxiously stomped his feet. How am I old? Didn't you say that my face was rosy and my skin was smooth without any wrinkles? Why are you complaining that I'm old now? Chapter 2052. Tan Yun leaped into the forest with Feng Jiao. Han Yuanzi panicked when he saw this. Wait for me. Wait for me, old man. He shouted and was about to chase after them when someone pulled him back. Senior Granduncle. Fan Yixio pulled him back and asked, Senior Granduncle, what should we do if you leave? They had not reached the depths of the forest yet. If they left, it would be difficult for them to reach the depths of the forest. Let go. Let go. The old man swung his hand and looked back at them angrily. What do you mean? Do you still need to ask me such a simple question? That little bastard has left, and this old man has to chase after him. I definitely won't be able to protect you. Hurry up and go back along the original path. Hurry up and get out of this volcano forest. Otherwise, if you continue to walk forward, who knows what you'll encounter? Second Master Chai nodded. You're right, Immortal Monarch. That's what I plan to do too. If all of them left, then they naturally couldn't go any further. They had already encountered enough on this trip, and it was too dangerous to go in without the protection of a strong warrior. This Fire Mountain forest wasn't a place they could come to, so it was better to leave, lest the younger generation of the clan die here. Fan Yixio was startled when he heard this. He looked at Han Yuanzi and Second Master Chai. After a long while, he turned to his junior brothers and sisters. What do you all plan to do? They looked at each other and said, Eldest senior brother, we also think that it's better to leave. Moreover, we want to go home after we get out of here. Fan Yixio nodded. That's good. Let's leave it at that. He looked at Han Yuanzi and said, Senior Granduncle, in the future. Before he could finish, he saw Han Yuanzi rushing forward. At the same time, his anxious voice was carried by the wind. All right. Don't talk too much to the old man. Hurry up and go back. The old man wants to find that little bastard. If we don't go after her, she'll be far away. Junyue, hurry up. After hearing his words, Zhuo Junyue nodded to the others and rushed forward to catch up with the old man. You're still injured. Don't you have a mount? Why don't you use it? With this reminder, Han Yuanzi was startled. That's right. I have a mount too. I've really been angered to the point of stupidity by that little bastard. I almost forgot that this old man also has a mount. As he spoke excitedly, he summoned his mount and leaped onto it. At the same time, he ordered his mount to run forward. Seeing this, Shuojunue raised his chi and followed closely behind Han Yuanzi, searching for Fengjiu. After watching them leave, Second Master Chai sighed and turned around to look at the crowd. The sky is getting brighter. Let's hurry up and leave. We should be more vigilant on the way back. Yes. Everyone responded. After they were done, they quickly left. However, as they walked, there were still many people who looked back. They felt that this trip to the volcano forest was really unforgettable. Everything that happened along the way would still be remembered clearly after a long time. On the other side, Fengjiu was in a good mood after finally killing Han Rong. Now that Han Rong was dead, all she had to do was go to the depths of the volcano forest to find some fire spark stones and bring them back. Then she could leave this place. Chapter 2053. The corners of her mouth twitched uncontrollably. About 100 meters behind her, the gray-robed old man was riding on a strange-looking mutated beast. Beside him was the expressionless Shuojunue. When she saw the two of them following her silently, she couldn't help but sigh. Behind them, when he saw that Fengjiu had noticed them, the old man grinned. He didn't have the slightest awareness that he was tailing someone. He even excitedly waved his hand at Fengjiu. "Hey, little rascal." Halfway through his words, little rascal didn't continue. Instead, he shouted, "Little master." In terms of shamelessness, if this old man claimed to be second, no one would dare to claim to be first. Although he was at a disadvantage, if he could learn Tai Chi, he would be very excited. So, who cared if she agreed or not? If he called her little master first and pestered her, he didn't believe that she wouldn't teach him. "Why aren't you following them? Why are you following me?" she asked helplessly. This old man was too careless. Wasn't he worried that those people would all die here? After all, they had been together for a long time. How could he not care about their lives? "I asked them to go back first. Why would I still need you to protect them?" As the old man spoke, he gestured for his mount to come forward. He came to Fengjiu's side and said, "Besides, I want to learn Tai Chi from you. I've already called you little master. You can't go back on your words." "I didn't force you to call me that." Fengjiu glanced at him. "Besides, I didn't preach. You can't do this." The old man felt wronged, but he couldn't do anything about it. Seeing this, Fengjiu looked at him, thought for a moment, and said, "I have to go back after I'm done. It's not convenient for me to stay here for long. You know that I have the Aurora teleportation scroll. I can leave much faster than you." "Speak human." The old man glared at her. Didn't she have to say what she wanted to say? "It's useless for you to follow me. I might disappear at any time. Since you want to learn, I can show you the way." Fengjiu looked at him and said, "Let me tell you, I will only learn from you. Don't push this old man to some random person." He snorted with a proud look on his face. Not everyone can make this old man call him little master. "You don't need to call me master. Go to the 100 Rivers City's Heavenly Dan building and find someone called Leng Hua. His Tai Chi was taught by me. You can go and learn from him." Fengjiu said with a smile. "No way. Who knows how much of what you taught him he learned? If he can't learn anything, he can teach me. I don't dare to teach him." He turned his eyes and stared at Fengjiu, asking, "What are you going to do in the depths of the forest?" Hearing this, Fengjiu looked into the depths of the volcanic forest and said, "Since I've come to the volcanic forest, I naturally want to bring some fire spark stones back and see if they are really useful treasures. In that case, wouldn't it be better for us to follow you? If anything happens along the way, we can take care of each other. Besides, this old man is injured now. If someone wants to kill this old man, won't this old man be dead for sure? Also, this old man has been here before. I'm familiar with this place," he said proudly with an expression that said he knew where to find the fire spark stones. Chapter 2054. Han Yuanzi stared at Fengjiu, then turned to look at Shuojunue beside him. his expression turned strange. This little girl kept staring at the block of wood. He was sure that even if she agreed to go with him, it was because of this block of wood. Could it be that she had taken a liking to him? He stroked his beard at the thought of him, and his wise eyes darted around. Thus, the one-man party became a three-man party. Fengjiu and Han Yuanzi sat on their mounts and slowly walked into the forest, while Zhuo Junyue followed beside them. They chatted along the way. "Little girl, I'm wearing men's clothes now, so don't call me a little girl. Just call me Xiao Jiao," Fengjiu said as she looked ahead. "Alright, then let me ask you. Who did I learn Taiji fist from? Is it your master?" The old man looked at her excitedly. This little girl could execute such a fist technique so skillfully. She wasn't simple at all. Fengjiu looked at him with a strange expression. "Do you have to ask which chicken laid an egg when you want to eat it?" The old man choked on his words and was instantly rendered speechless. Fengjiu looked past him and fixed her gaze on Zhuo Junyue. "Who else is in your family?" What was better and faster than asking the person herself for information? Hearing this, the old man widened his eyes and stared at Fengjiu with a strange expression. He thought to himself, why is this little girl asking about this so openly? Even if she's interested in that block of wood, she shouldn't be so direct. Thus, he coughed lightly and said, "Why don't you ask me what you want to know?" This old man knows his situation better than anyone else. He straightened his back and looked at Fengjiu with a look that seemed to say, "Come and ask me, come and ask me." The old man saw that she was ignoring him, so he couldn't help but say, he has two parents in his family. He has a grandmother and a pair of younger siblings. He's 27 this year, and most importantly, he's not married yet. Fengjiu's eyes flickered. Grandmother is here too? Then where is his home? This time, she looked at Han Yuanzi. It's in Wanxiang City. Wanxiang City's Zhuo family. Just ask around and you'll know. It's not far from 100 Rivers City. The old man said with a smile. Zhuo Junyue glanced at the old man, speechless. He knew exactly what the old man was planning. He didn't know what was going on, so he was just spouting nonsense. Fengjiu nodded. Yes, I understand. She took out her wine gourd and drank a mouthful of wine. So it was the Zhuo family of Wanxiang City. Xiao Jiao, why are you so curious about him? Could it be that you've taken a fancy to him? The old man looked at Fengjiu with a smile and asked. Hearing this, Fengjiu, who was drinking a mouthful of wine, choked. She coughed and glared at primordial chaos. What are you talking about? How is this possible? Impossible? The old man looked askance at her in disbelief. He obviously didn't believe her. It's impossible. I have a fiancé, and we're just short of getting married. Fengjiu explained helplessly. What was this old man thinking? How could she be interested in Zhuo Junyue? What nonsense. Zhuo Junyue also glanced at the old man, his expression ugly. You have a fiancé? Then why are you asking about him? The old man asked strangely. This girl was so outstanding. What kind of man would she like? He couldn't help but be curious. Chapter 2055. The three of them walked into the forest and chatted for a while. Since Zhuo Junyue didn't speak much, Fengjiu didn't ask any more questions. The journey was quite peaceful. Before the beasts in the forest could get close, they were scared away by the aura of their mounts. They didn't even need to fight. Until noon, when they stopped to rest and took out rations from the space to eat, a group of mercenaries came to rest nearby. When the mercenaries saw the three of them, they were surprised. They sized up the three of them and recognized that the old man was the Nebula Immortal Sect's Master Han Yuan. As for the other two, they didn't know who they were. It's Han Yuan from the Nebula Immortal Sect. Leader, should we go and greet him? A mercenary asked the leader. Since we've met, it's better to greet him. As the mercenary group leader spoke, he glanced behind him and said to everyone, you guys rest here. I'll go ahead and greet them. Among the 30 to 40 mercenaries resting here, there was a tall and muscular man wearing a mercenary uniform who was eating rations. If Fengjiu saw him, he would be overjoyed. This was because this person was none other than Guan Shilin, who went out to train after coming here. The leader didn't get too close. Instead, he cupped his fists and bowed. Hun Yuan, immortal lord, I didn't expect to meet you here. Seeing that he was recognized, Hun Yuan looked at the mercenary in surprise. How do you know this old man? I don't think we've met before. Immortal Lord naturally doesn't know me. However, I was fortunate enough to see Immortal Lord once. The mercenary smiled. Back then, I met Immortal Lord and saw Immortal Lord saving people. It's still fresh in my memory. Hearing this, Hun Yuan smiled and stroked his beard. He glanced at Fengjiu. So that's how it is. This old man has a kind heart. When I was outside, I often saved people. After saving so many people, I don't remember it. Fengjiu didn't react. He just ate his rations and didn't say anything. After chatting with Hun Yuan for a while, the leader cupped his fists and left. Immortal Lord, my mercenary team is resting nearby. I'll go back first. If fate wills it, we'll meet again. Go! The old man nodded and watched the mercenary group leader leave. Then he looked at Fengjiu with a smile. How was it, little girl? Did you see it? This old man is very popular. You should learn from me. Save people when you go out, you'll meet someone you know. Maybe you'll meet someone you've saved. Let's go after resting. I've been here for so long, but I haven't seen a single Fire Park stone. Fengjiu stood up, patted her green clothes, and mounted Tun Yun's back. What's the rush? I'm not in a hurry. Although he said that, he still got on the back of his contracted beast and walked beside her. Zhuo Junyue continued to follow quietly without saying anything. Not long after they left, the mercenary team was about to continue their journey after resting when they heard rustling sounds. Then, a sinister laugh sounded. Haha, another mercenary team. What a waste of effort. Chapter 2056. When the mercenary group's leader saw the 60 to 70 people surrounding them, a grave expression appeared on his face. It's the Death Mercenary Group. Hearing the leader's words, the expressions of all the mercenaries changed slightly. They were also mercenary groups, so they had heard a little about the Death Mercenary Group. According to rumors, the members of the Death Mercenary Group specialized in plundering and robbing in this forest. In addition, they would also recruit other mercenaries into their mercenary group. If they didn't submit to them, there was only one outcome, and that was death. What caused their expressions to change was that these people's cultivations weren't weak, especially their combat strengths. Practically no one who encountered this Death Mercenary Group was able to survive. Seeing the 60 to 70 mercenaries of the Death Mercenary Group wearing uniform dark brown mercenary uniforms surrounding them, the mercenary group's leader calmed down and shouted in a deep voice, "Get ready to fight." Although the ferocious Tiger Mercenary Group only had 30 to 40 people, all of them were men. It wasn't that they hadn't tried to fight a situation where they were outnumbered, but they had never fought the Death Mercenary Group. Yes. The members of the ferocious Tiger Mercenary Group drew their weapons and prepared to fight at any time. They only had a moment of seriousness when they learned that the other party was the Death Mercenary Group, but now, every one of them firmly held the weapons in their hands and prepared to fight at any time. Seeing the strong battle intent on these people, the leader of the Death Mercenary Group couldn't help but narrow his eyes and size them up. What? Aren't you afraid of death? Ha! We haven't even fought, and you already know who's going to die? The leader of the ferocious Tiger Mercenary Group raised his head and laughed heroically. We've never been afraid of anyone. If you want to fight, then come. Hee, ignorant. The leader of the Death Mercenary Group sneered and stared at those people. He saw that these people were excellent mercenary seedlings, so he immediately issued an invitation. As long as you submit to our Death Mercenary Group and become mercenaries under my command, not to mention your lives, even your families will be able to eat and drink well with us. How about it? The leader of the ferocious Tiger Mercenary Group's face darkened. Don't waste your breath. The mercenaries under my command aren't cowards who are afraid of death. Hearing this, the members of the Death Mercenary Group were surprised when they saw that none of the mercenaries were moved. At the same time, they also felt a trace of admiration. These people were all men. Since that's the case, then let's fight. There's no need to waste your breath on them. With an order, the 60 to 70 mercenaries surged forward and surrounded the 30 to 40 mercenaries in the middle. For a moment, the glint of swords' sword light flew, and piercing cold sword chi whistled in the forest. The sound of battle resounded, and the airflow in this area was affected by their battle. Although the Ferocious Tiger Mercenary Group, the Ferocious Death, the Death Mercenary Group, Ferocious Tiger Mercenary Group, was the Ferocious Death Sun, this Death, us. Among the mercenaries, Guan Shilin was mercilessly swinging his huge blade. His fighting strength was astonishing. Anyone who got close to him would either have their head chopped off, their arms chopped off, or they would be chopped in half by his blade. Chapter 2057. It was precisely because of this that a strange phenomenon gradually occurred. In this chaotic battle of over 100 people, not a single member of the Death Mercenaries appeared beside Guan Shilin. He brandished his saber and frowned as he slammed the saber hilt into the ground. He saw that there was no one beside him, while the others were besieged by several or even more Death Mercenaries. Seeing that the members of the Ferocious Tiger Mercenaries were all injured and fighting a bloody battle, he knew that this couldn't go on, so he turned his gaze to the leader of the Death Mercenaries. He saw that the leader of the Death Mercenaries was fighting with their leader, and the mercenaries were faintly at a disadvantage. He dodged too slowly and was slashed in the shoulder by the other party. Seeing that the saber was stuck in the flesh of their leader's shoulder, his heart sank and he immediately stepped forward with his saber. Hiss! The leader of the Ferocious Tiger Mercenary Group took a deep breath and cried out in pain. He swung the weapon in his hand towards the other party, but the moment he swung the sword in his hand, the leader of the Death Mercenary Group pulled back his hand. The sword that had cut into his flesh was suddenly pulled out, and a stream of blood splattered out. Under the impact of the force, the leader of the Death Mercenary Group staggered and fell back. However, the leader of the Death Mercenaries didn't stop attacking because of this. He brandished his saber and attacked the leader of the Ferocious Tiger Mercenaries. At this moment, a Death Mercenary on the side attacked the leader of the Ferocious Tiger Mercenaries' waist with a sword in his hand. At this moment, it was already impossible for him to dodge. He couldn't help but clench his teeth, thinking that even if he was hit from the side, he had to block the fatal blow in front of him. Unexpectedly, he'd overestimated his combat strength, and the injury he'd suffered from the Death Mercenaries' commander's strike was too severe, causing him to be unable to exert any strength. Just when he thought he was dead for sure, a figure pounced over like a ferocious tiger. He instantly pulled the leader of the Ferocious Tiger Mercenaries behind him, and then he brandished his saber, and a fierce saber aura attacked. The leader of the Death Mercenaries in front of him quickly retreated to avoid the attack and saved his life. However, the Death Mercenary on the side couldn't dodge in time and was chopped in half at the waist by the saber aura. His intestines flowed out, and the bloody scene was nauseating. He was dumbfounded. Looking at the new mercenary who stood in front of him and protected him, his mind was in a mess for a moment, and he only felt that it was inconceivable. This new mercenary who joined them not long ago and only went on 2 missions with them actually had such amazing fighting strength. He stood behind him and watched as he blocked all directions with the might of one man holding the pass against 10,000 men. Looking at him, the new mercenary in front of him, and the smell of the ferocious tiger mercenaries, and ferocious tiger mercenaries, and ferocious. The ferocious. Leader, you rest on the side. Leave this person to me. Guan Shilin said in a calm voice, and shouted to the other members of the Ferocious Tiger Mercenary Group, 2 of you, come and protect the leader. Apply medicine and bandage his wounds. But 2 of the members of the Ferocious Tiger Mercenary Group who came back to their senses quickly responded, and quickly walked to their leader's side. One of them protected him, while the other took out medicine and quickly applied medicine to stop the bleeding. Chapter 2058. I know. Guan Shilin nodded as he spoke. He waved the large saber in his hand and pointed it at the ground. His piercingly cold gaze was fixed on the leader of the death mercenaries in front of him. At this moment, the leader of the death mercenaries was sizing him up. Seeing his piercingly cold aura and his dark force aura, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Just a mystic? You actually have such ability? Compared to spirit cultivators, mystic was only slightly stronger. Their combat strength was far inferior to spirit cultivators. However, this person's skills and combat strength made him somewhat apprehensive. So what if you're a mystic? It's already amazing if I can kill you. Guan Shilin shouted in a deep voice. As soon as he finished speaking, his dark force aura burst forth. He took a step forward and waved the large saber in his hand, attacking the other party at a fast and ruthless speed. Clang! The leader of the death mercenaries quickly used the large saber in his hand to block the other party's attack. However, when the two sabers collided, he was forcefully pushed back by the other party's strength. He retreated step by step, completely unable to stop. The aura of the saber shot out from the two people's sabers. The strong airflow caused small cuts on the mercenaries on the two people's bodies. The leader of the death mercenaries injected a surge of spiritual force aura and forcefully pushed the other party away. At the same time, he retreated a few meters back. Sir, with such ability, you're actually willing to be a mercenary in this small mercenary group? As long as you agree to join us, I'll give you the position of vice leader. How about it? He didn't give up and said again. He really felt that this person's skills were very good. If he could recruit him to his mercenary group, it would definitely be a great thing for his mercenary group. Not interested. Guan Shilin's low and sharp voice rang out. He waved the large saber in his hand and attacked again. Every move he made was a killing move. The two of them exchanged blows. Not long after, the leader of the death mercenaries was slashed by his saber. The wound on his arm was so deep that his bones could be seen. Fresh blood gushed out and quickly dyed his mercenary uniform red. Damn it! He cursed under his breath and stared at Guan Shilin gloomily. However, he saw Guan Shilin take a step forward and attack him again. Guan Shilin swung his broadsword with great force. Guan Shilin tried to block it with the broadsword in his hand, but it was suppressed by Guan Shilin's broadsword. Guan Shilin's strength was so great that his hand was numb. Clang! The hand that was holding the broadsword trembled, and the broadsword in his hand fell to the ground. Looking at the incoming attack, he was shocked. As he quickly retreated, he grabbed a member of the death mercenary group and used him as a shield. So, ugh. The sound of the blade piercing into the body was heard. The mercenary's eyes widened in shock. He stared at his leader in shock and anger. He had never thought that he would be used as a shield. How cold-blooded and heartless. Guan Shilin snorted coldly. He took another step forward and swung his saber again. This time I'll take your head. The murderous voice rang out, and the sharp and intimidating murderous intent caused the leader of the death mercenary group to be shocked. He had never thought that this person's strength would be so strong. The strength of his opponent's attack was so strong that he couldn't compete with it. Moreover, his skillful killing moves made him fearful. Chapter 2059. Whoosh! Out of the sharp energy of the saber slashed down, and a shrill scream rang out. It echoed in the forest, causing people to tremble in fear, and their hands and feet to turn ice cold. The aura of death permeated the air, especially when the members of the death mercenary group saw their leader being chopped in half by the mercenary wielding a broadsword. That scene was too bloody and too shocking, to the extent that many of them were unable to react. They stood there blankly for a long time, unable to return to their senses. Kill! The leader of the ferocious tiger mercenary group, who was shocked by the scene in front of him, suddenly came back to his senses. He looked at the stunned members of the death mercenary group and immediately ordered his mercenaries to kill. Kill! 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 Under the leader's order, even though the members of the ferocious tiger mercenary group were injured, they quickly swung their blades at the death mercenary group after coming back to their senses. They wanted to catch them off guard and kill them without leaving a single piece of armor behind. Roars filled with excitement and battle intent came from their mouths. Everyone's spirit force and aura gathered together. At this moment, battle intent surged out like an erupting volcano. Everyone's combat strength seemed to be stimulated, and they all ignored their injuries and did their best to kill the enemy. When the leader of the death mercenary group died, it was like their backbone had collapsed. Everyone panicked and wanted to escape, but the more they panicked, the more chaotic it became. In the end, there were countless casualties, and only a few people managed to escape. On the other side, Fengjiu, Han Yuanzi, and Zhuo Junyue didn't leave for long before they heard the sounds of fighting behind them. She didn't feel anything, but Han Yuanzi stopped and looked back. This sound, could it be those mercenaries? He stroked his beard and murmured while looking at Fengjiu. Don't look at me. Do what you want to do. I didn't stop you, Fengjiu said as she sat on Tun Yun's back and drank wine. She wasn't a good person and wouldn't rush forward for everything. Even if she helped, it would depend on her luck and her mood. Hearing this, the old man chuckled. In that case, shall we rest here? Let Junyue go back and take a look? Fengjiu did not answer. Instead, he changed his position and laid face up on Tun Yun's soft and comfortable fur. Meanwhile, Tun Yun laid down so that she could rest comfortably for a while. Seeing this, the old man gestured to Zhuo Junyue. Hurry up and check on the mercenaries. If there's anything you need help with, just lend me a hand. Zhuo Junyue responded, then took a deep breath and flew back. Seeing that he had left, the old man patted his mount, making it lower its head before jumping down. He walked in front of Fengjiu and asked with a smile, "Little girl, tell me honestly, why do you want to know about Blockhead's family?" Fengjiu glanced at him and did not hide anything. Instead, he directly said, "I am helping my master find his descendant. I saw that his expression when he saw the Qingfeng sword was strange, so I guessed his identity. Since you said that you know everything about his family, then do you know if he has any relatives with the surname Chu?" Chapter 2060. What do you mean? Fengjiu looked at him and asked. It's their family. They're from the Zhuo family. Although his father is the eldest son of the Zhuo family, his status in the family is not as good as that of a side branch. He is always suppressed by his second uncle. As for his grandmother, although she's still alive, she's been living in seclusion due to her poor health. She doesn't care about the family matters either. This kid's family is practically invisible in the Zhuo family. Otherwise, this kid wouldn't be by my side. Hearing this, Fengjiu was slightly surprised. There's such a thing? Her heart skipped a beat. Could it be that his father? There were some things she wanted to ask, but she didn't feel like it was appropriate. You want to ask if his father is of the Zhuo family's bloodline? The old man stroked his beard and smiled. Actually, this old man doesn't really care about matters related to their family's bloodline, so I really don't know much about this matter. If you want to know, you can ask around yourself. Hearing this, Fengjiu thought to herself, it seems like this matter really needs to be investigated by the Phoenix Guards. Maybe there really is a connection. But this old man will tell you. Do you know why I call him Blockhead? Actually, the old man's interest was piqued, and he stood there and told Fengjiu about Zhuo Junyue. On the other side, the members of the ferocious tiger mercenary group stood there in a daze. They stared blankly at the corpses on the ground for a long time before turning their gazes to Guan Shilin, who was standing with a large sword in his hand. They only knew that Guan Shilin was a new member, and only a temporary one at that. He had only gone on 2 missions with them. Usually, he didn't look any different from the other mercenaries, except that he didn't talk much. Who would have thought that such an inconspicuous mercenary would play such a huge role in this battle, and even bring about such an unbelievable shock to them? In contrast to their stunned expressions, Guan Shilin turned around and strode to the side of the pale-faced leader. "Leader, how are you?" "I'm fine." Although his face was pale, he was excited and in good spirits. He looked at Guan Shilin, who was half squatting in front of him, and smiled gratefully. "Little Guan, thank you so much. If it wasn't for you, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to keep my life." "Leader, what are you talking about? This is what I should do," Guan Shilin said as he looked at the others. "Brothers, you're all injured. Let's find a place to bandage your wounds first. Yes, we can't stay here any longer. Clean up the scene and we'll leave as soon as possible. We'll find a place to bandage our wounds first. The leader of the ferocious tiger mercenary group panted as he spoke, his voice weak. Go. Everyone quickly cleaned up the scene. Those who were lightly injured helped those who were heavily injured, and the group quickly left. In the dark, Zhuojunyue, who had witnessed the scene, retracted his gaze and left quietly. The two people who were talking heard the commotion and knew that he had returned. They looked back at the same time. Seeing that he had returned so quickly, the old man asked, "How was it? Who did those mercenaries meet? Are they still alive?" "They met the death mercenary group," Zhuojunyue said. Then he paused and heard the old man's shocked voice. "Death mercenary group? It's over, it's over. Doesn't that mean they're all dead? With their strength, how could they be a match for those people?" Chapter 2061. Oh, there are mercenaries even stronger than the leader? The old man asked with interest. Yes. One of the mercenaries is a mystic. His cultivation is very high. He killed the leader of the opposing mercenary group with a single slash, Zhuojunyue said. As Zhuojunyue spoke, he recalled that when he had rushed over he had not seen the saber slash down. However, judging from the scene, that was indeed the case. The old man stroked his beard and glanced at Fengjiu. As expected, there are strong people everywhere. And strong people like to hide. Fengjiu pretended not to see the old man's gaze. She patted Tun Yun's head. Tun Yun stood up and strode forward. The old man also got on his contracted beast and the three of them leisurely walked into the forest. 2 days later, as they got closer and closer to the crater, not only did the surrounding trees become fewer and fewer, but the temperature on the ground and in the air also became higher and higher. Due to the increasing temperature, Tun Yun was panting from exhaustion. Fengjiu put it into her space and walked by herself. The old man put his contracted beast away as well. The three of them walked slowly together. "Is this place always so hot?" Fengjiu asked. Even though she was stepping on the ground, she could still feel the scorching heat. Under the hot air, she was sweating nonstop. She drank a lot of water along the way. "We're close to the crater. There are still some trees here. If we go further, there won't be any trees, let alone weeds on the ground. Even ferocious beasts won't come here," the old man said as he wiped his sleeve. The old man raised his sleeve to wipe his sweat as he said, "But in these places, you should pay more attention to the black stones under your feet. Those glowing black stones are the Firespark stones. They belong to the fire attribute and are extremely useful for the cultivation of fire attribute people." Fengjiu looked at the ground under her feet. The ground was very dry and there wasn't a single blade of grass in this area. As for the glowing black stones the old man mentioned, she didn't see them. The volcano erupts once every 3 months, especially those rock ores. You guys have to be careful. Don't get splashed by the rock ores. There's no cure for it. The fire poison is very strong. If you're not careful, you'll lose your life. The old man reminded the two of them as they walked. However, there's another treasure here other than the Firespark stones. Upon hearing this, Fengjiu looked at him and asked curiously, "What treasure?" Halfway up the volcano, there's a kind of spiritual herb called the illuminating flame grass. It's said that this herb has a wide range of uses and is very precious. It's a spiritual herb that only grows once every 100 years. It's very spiritual and will automatically absorb the illuminating flame stones in the volcano as nutrients. When the volcano erupts, it will slip away and move to another place. After the volcano erupts, it will appear again halfway up the volcano. After so many years, it seems that only a few have seen the world. Fengjiu was surprised. It can move on its own? Then it can transform into a medicine spirit? The old man looked at her and said, "This volcano erupts once every 3 months. How can it have time to transform into a medicine spirit? It's said that this kind of medicine is born like this. It can only be found in this place. You can't find it anywhere else." Chapter 2062. Hee hee, that's right. This old man is here for it. He smiled as he stroked his beard. This dazzling fire herb has another name. It's called the celestial herb. I heard that it has the miraculous effect of prolonging one's life, curing all kinds of internal injuries, and greatly increasing the cultivation of fire attribute cultivators. Naturally, this old man wants to find one just in case. Fengjiu looked at him speechlessly. Why was this old man's thinking so different from others? Why would he come here to find the celestial herb just in case? Did he think that he didn't have long to live? Or did he think that he would suffer some kind of fatal internal injury? Hiss! Suddenly she sucked in a breath. She felt something under her foot. She moved her foot away and saw a sharp black stone protruding from the ground. The black stone shone brightly under the sunlight. She squatted down in surprise and dug out the sharp black stone. The old man and Zhuo Junyue walked over. When they saw the black stone that she had dug out, surprise flashed across their eyes. They didn't expect that she would step on a dazzling fire rock while walking. Her luck was truly heaven-defying. This is the dazzling fire rock, right? It's not that shiny. She held the black stone that she had just dug out from the ground. This firespark stone was only the size of an egg, but it had a very sharp tip. This small stone was buried underground, and it was this tip that was sticking out of the ground that caused her to feel pain when she stepped on it. This is the dazzling fire rock. Some are bigger than the one in your hand, while others are smaller. The old man smiled at her. With your heaven-defying luck, this old man thinks that if I bring you along to find the dazzling fire herb, we'll definitely find one. Fengjiu played with the dazzling fire rock in his hand. He looked at the old man with a sly smile. If I find it, I won't give it to you. If you find it, then it's naturally yours. This old man can exchange it with you. Han Yuanzi glanced at Fengjiu. Don't worry. I won't take advantage of you. There's a firespark stone here too. Zhuo Junyue's voice suddenly caught their attention. The old man hurried forward and saw Zhuo Junyue bending down to dig up a fist-sized firespark stone. The old man couldn't help but feel a little envious when he saw this. His words were filled with jealousy. You two are bullying this old man. Are my old eyes not good? How come the old man didn't find it when he was walking around? Hearing this, Zhuo Junyue glanced at him and threw the fist-sized firespark stone into his arms. The old man stared blankly at the fist-sized firespark stone in his arms. You don't want it? This is good stuff. There should be more in this area. We can continue searching. As Zhuo Junyue spoke, he slowed down his pace. As he walked around, he looked for any abnormalities on the ground. That's true. The old man nodded. He put away the firespark stone and continued to search at the side. Fengjiu lowered his head to look at the firespark stone in his hand. He also searched in this area. As Zhuo Junyue said, there should be more than 2 firespark stones in this area. Chapter 2063. Because they searched carefully in this area, they really did find a lot of firespark stones. Fengjiu and the old man were very happy. The two of them even competed to see who could find more later. Although it was hot here, they were still laughing because of their mood. Their laughter naturally attracted the attention of some people in the area. There were 3 groups of people who noticed Fengjiu and the others. One of them might have recognized Han Yuan, but after seeing the person who was squatting on the ground digging for firespark stones, they waved their hands and quietly left. As for the other 2 groups, they saw the 3 of them digging up the firespark stones. Moreover, there were only 3 of them. They naturally did not want to miss such a great opportunity. Therefore, they had the idea of robbing them. Whether it was Fengjiu, Han Yuanzi, or Zhuo Junyue, they already knew that there were people watching them. They just ignored them. After picking up all the firespark stones they could find, they roughly calculated that there were only about 20 of them. The big ones were the size of fists and the small ones were the size of rocks. Alright, where are we going? Although it's a little small, there should be more ahead. The old man said with a smile. There was a sense of excitement in his eyes as if he was digging for treasure. Fengjiu played with the firespark stone in her hand. She looked at Hunyuan and Zhujunyue and said, "We've been robbed along the way. Do you think we'll be targeted again?" In fact, she wanted to rob them instead. These people who specialized in robbing here must have a lot of good stuff on them. Thinking of this, she did not want to take a step forward. The weather is hot. Why don't we find a place to rest before we continue? Hunyuan and Zhujunyue looked at her but did not say anything. The old man thought for a moment and pointed in a direction. "It's so hot here. There's not even a place to sit. Why don't we go over there and take a look?" Feng Jiu looked in the direction he was pointing and happened to see the person who was hiding. She couldn't help but smile. "Who are you, sir? Why are you hiding?" As soon as she said that, the two groups of people stood up. However, they ignored Feng Jiu's group and started fighting. "We were the ones who set our sights on this prey first." The leader of one of the groups shouted, "We're in charge of this place. Since we're here, the things are naturally ours." "What? You want to fight? Don't forget that we've fought before." "All right. In that case, let's get those things first and then divide them equally." The two groups of people were discussing here. When they looked up, they could faintly hear the voices of the three people. "What the hell are you trying to do? These people are here to rob you. Don't tell me you're going to give them everything? How is that?" "I was just thinking that since these people came to us on their own accord, we might as well rob them. It's better than letting them rob us," Feng Jiu said matter-of-factly. "Are you confident? The other party has quite a number of people. Although they were not afraid of these people if they attacked, it would be what's so difficult about that?" Her eyes flashed with a sly smile. "The temperature here is rising. The effect of the medicine is taking effect faster. Look, they're all down." Chapter 2064. Feng Jiu smiled and clapped her hands. She walked forward leisurely. "Have you forgotten what I do for a living? Why do I have to make a move for such a small matter?" The old man's mouth twitched. He muttered softly, "How could I forget? You're a robber." Zhujunyue's lips curled into a smile. He glanced at Feng Jiu and followed her. The people who fell to the ground fainted one by one. Feng Jiu didn't kill them. She just looted everything from their bodies. In the end, she looked through her loot. "Tsk, these people have everything in their collection. Looks like they've robbed a lot of people. How can they do so well here with such little ability?" She shook her head and muttered softly. Then she put everything away. When the old man saw her putting everything away, he glared at her and asked, "Don't you have to give some to us? Are you going to take everything for yourself?" "You want it? I thought you're Mount Tai of the Immortal Sect and wouldn't want these things. If this gets out, won't your reputation be ruined?" Hearing this, the old man said angrily, "I don't care." "You don't care? Who was the one who tried to stop me? You didn't even move a finger." She turned and smiled at Zhujunyue. She reached out and patted his shoulder. "He should get some." You're biased." The old man felt wronged. He couldn't understand why she didn't like him when he was such a popular person. "I'm not biased. Junyue has been helping me take all these people's treasures." Feng Jiu smiled and said to Zhujunyue, who was still holding a lot of things, "Keep those cosmos bags and interspatial rings for your future wife." Zhujunyue's mouth twitched. He handed the things in his hand over. "No need. Keep them. Keep them. You'll have meat to eat if you follow me." She proudly patted him on the shoulder as she spoke. Her actions were completely devoid of the gentleness of a woman. Instead, they were filled with the carefree spirit of a man. The old man was jealous. He tugged at his beard in pain and said to Zhujunyue, "You don't believe me when I say you're a blockhead? You don't even know how to accept something that's delivered to your doorstep. Haven't you heard of this before? Why don't you take it?" Zhujunyue glanced at the old man speechlessly. Then, he kept the item and said to Feng Jiu, "Thank you. No need to thank me. Let's go. There are still treasures inside," she said with a smile. When she passed by a fainted person, she lifted her foot and stepped on the person's hand. The hand that was quietly holding onto the knife loosened due to the pain. The faint sound of bones breaking could be heard, but the person endured it and did not make a single sound. When the old man and Zhuojunue saw this, they didn't say anything. The three of them walked forward as if they were taking a stroll in their own backyard. Perhaps it was because of the spoils of war, but the smiles on their faces increased even in the scorching heat. Not long after the three of them left, the person who had been stepped on earlier sat up with a horrified expression. Among these people, he and the other person were the strongest. Although the medicine made them unconscious, they quickly woke up. Chapter 2065. Chi. I thought you had some ability. You actually want to hurt people with a knife? A middle-aged man on the other side sneered and slowly sat up from the ground. He patted the dust off his body and glanced at the man with a broken wrist. How good are you? You're still pretending even when you're awake. Useless. The man with a broken wrist snorted coldly with a gloomy face and stood up from the ground. How can that be the same? I saw how powerful those three people were and didn't dare to make a move. Otherwise, not only would we lose our belongings, we would also lose our lives here. Although that person was unwilling, a wise man submits to circumstances. He was very clear that if they really held their sabers and fought like him, they would probably lose their lives in the end. Those people obviously only took the treasures and didn't hurt anyone. They were already merciful. If they took the treasures, they wouldn't leave their lives behind. But speaking of which, who are those people? The two of them looked at their unconscious subordinates on the ground and asked doubtfully. Hee, you dare to make a move without knowing who they are? A voice came from behind them. They saw that the group of people who had left earlier had returned. However, they had a gloating expression on their faces. You know, these teams often looted in this area, so they were more or less familiar with it. If I didn't know, I would probably end up like you. That person's gaze swept across them and mockingly looked at their empty bodies. You don't have anything left, right? It's good enough that you can keep your lives. Who are those three people? The middle-aged man with a broken wrist asked. He was very unwilling. Those treasures were all they had, but they were all taken away just like that. I don't know about the other two, but that old man is Hunyuan from the Nebula Immortal sect. You even dared to touch him. I can't help but admire your guts. As that person spoke, he shook his head and was too lazy to deal with them. When the two of them heard this, their faces paled and they felt a lingering fear. It was actually Hunyuan from the Nebula Immortal sect? That sect's Mount Tai? Oh my god. They were really unlucky to have met such an old thing. However, what infuriated them even more was that the one who had defeated them wasn't Hunyuan Z, but a young man in green with unknown origins. There's a cave up ahead. Shall we rest there tonight? The old man pointed at a cave up ahead. Alright, you guys go ahead first. I'll take a look around to see if there's any game. Walking in this place without any meat to eat was suffering. You want to eat meat in a place like this? There's no need to think about it. There's no wild game in this place. The old man waved his hand and walked towards the cave. Zhuojunue looked at Fengjiu and said, I'll go with you. Wild game is rare, but if you're lucky, you might encounter some. Fengjiu rolled his eyes and said with a smile, I know. Since there are very few wild animals here, we should be able to get some from other people's caves. Those teams that stopped to rob in this area would definitely have some game. Wouldn't it be better to just go to them and get some? Hearing this, Zhuojunue was stunned for a moment before revealing a faint smile. Alright, let's go take a look then. That you're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.